So, I'm going to open up a question. When you hear the word nonprofit, what do you think?
Service.
Service. Okay. What else?
Back in the day, I used to think they didn't make money.
Didn't make money. Anybody else on? I didn't hear anybody on Zoom. Anybody want to share with us what they think when you hear nonprofit?
Think of something strictly for the community, and you're not making any type of money, but you're just doing it for the love of it.
Okay. So service, not making any money.
I think about the word charity.
Charity, for the love of it, and so forth. And I'd say most of that is pretty true. But what I'd like to do is change your mind a little bit on some other things. Here we go. So, when you have a nonprofit, when you think of the workforce in the United States, it divides into three sectors. The first sector out of three different sectors is the public sector. The second is the private sector, and the third is the nonprofit sector. When you look at that, typically the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, they're all there to fulfill society's wants and needs. Where one stops, the other ends. Or where one stops, the other starts. So basically, some common shared needs of all three is, number one, capital to launch. If you have a for-profit business, you need money. And if you have a nonprofit, you need what?
Money.
Money, okay? And if it's the government, guess what you need?
Money.
Money, okay? So you need cash flow, because the money needs to be flowing. Revenue or income for your staff to pay people to do the work that needs to be done. So all three share those three areas. However, when you look at the breakdown, 70% of organized people in the workforce work for profits. Okay, they work for a business. Okay, that's making money. Might be Walmart, it might be Apple. But it's a business that they're for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to make profit. Okay? Then about 15% of the people that work, and this might be outdated as of about a month ago, but 15% is government, right? So after the layoff, it might be 14 or 13, in the last few weeks, but it's been traditionally about 15%. About 10% of that, the people that work in the workforce is nonprofit, and then we have 5% that are other. But if you see here, you see the breakdown. Okay, so the total number of people employed by nonprofits is approximately 17 million people. So if you thought there was no money, are you still thinking there's no money? 17 million people are being paid to work for nonprofits. But there's about 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, officially established. If we go unestablished, we go further, but officially established. 2/3 of those nonprofits are of a 501c3 status. That's the most common one, okay? And that's what we would call charitable. And we'll get into that a little further down the road. The total U.S. nonprofit annual revenue is $2.6 a year. Somebody said there's no money, so I'm co-signing, right? No, $2.6 trillion, okay, is the annual revenue for nonprofits. Okay, and that's as of 2023. The charitable organization has the most revenue in the U.S. Is Lutheran Services in America, with $23 billion with a B in revenue for one nonprofit. Okay, annually. Most revenue in the state of Georgia is Northside Hospital for $6 billion.
Wow.
Okay. Now, if there's two people here, there's two of you. One of you donated to a charity. So well, more than one of you. 56% of people in America donated to a charity, okay, per year. And typically, demographics, most people age between 56 and 75, okay, tend to be generous, okay? Now, when you look at some of the corporations around the country, we can see that Georgia has one of the large nonprofits here is the American Cancer Society in Georgia. And you look throughout, you see all different, you have Kaiser out of Oregon, and you have Dignity Health out in California, and so forth and so on, right? And when you look at some of their revenues, I mentioned already, Lutheran Services America is $22.3 billion, Mayo Clinic, $19.8 billion, New York Presbyterian Hospital, $11.3 billion, Mount Sinai Health System. Now notice the pattern, right? A lot of these large nonprofits are places that serve us, their hospitals. YMCA of the USA, $7.4 billion annual revenue. Goodwill Industries. Anybody been into a Goodwill lately? Yeah, $7.4 billion as well. Salvation Army, there you go. I've had a few things there I would not say because I don't want y'all to talk about my secret. You know? Salvation Army, $6, $6 billion a year. Okay? And just to throw in a few locally, a few foundations. Locally, you have the Community Foundation of North Georgia. You have the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. And so Foundation of Georgia is $274 million. They do a lot of work. They typically donate to arts and culture, child welfare, community and economic development, education and health. Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, $171 million. Again, education, health, human services, arts and culture, right? Community Foundation of Chattahoochee, North Georgia Community Foundation, Community Foundation for Central Savannah. So those are organizations that are within your reach right here in Georgia. That if you have a nonprofit organization, you can reach out to them, partner with them, or request for grants. So nonprofit types. So here are the different types. So remember I mentioned that 2/3 of nonprofits are 501c3. Typically, when you have a 501c3 purpose, you have for religious, mostly for charitable. Some will do scientific, literary, educational, public safety testing, cruelty prevention, and amateur sports. So those are the what's the word? The allowed status for 501c3 nonprofits. But if you go and look up 501c3 nonprofit organization types, there's a whole slew of them. You have 501c1, okay, and some of them are for governmental. For example, you have 501c1 corporations organized under Congress, i.e. federal credit unions. So if you do business with a credit union that is not a private credit union, it's a nonprofit, okay? And it would typically be categorized as 501c1. Again, we have the 501c3, which we talked about. Civic leagues and the social welfare organizations, such as League of Women Voters, for example, the NAACP, and certain other organizations of 501c4, they're for advocacy, social welfare organizations. And when you go down the list, business leagues, Chamber of Commerce's, business associations, and so forth. And then when you keep going, it just keeps going. 501c11, teachers' retirement funds, right? 501c21, Black Lung Benefits Trust, you know. 501c18, employee funded pension trust. So if you have a trust that's funded by employees, it's probably 501c18. And so, you know, if like 501c13, all of us will have to deal with that one, right? Cemetery companies, right? or not exclusively for members. So as you go across the board, you find that you keep, you're dealing with a nonprofit at some level for some reason throughout your life. Where we're sitting here is a what? It's a nonprofit, right? Yeah, I think so. Dr. Setu, they confirmed that, but I believe it's classified as one. But as we go forward, so so it's like, okay, great, I see. So how many of you still believe there's no money in nonprofits? Raise your hand. Raise it real high so I can see it. So if you still believe there's no money in nonprofit, thank you for being here. Have a nice day. See you next time, or whatever, right? But if we manage to change your mind a little bit, maybe you might be considering to start one, or if you started one, you need some help. Let's talk about that, right? Typically, you want to get incorporated to be official. You want to build a board to run your organization. You want to establish a vision statement that clearly defines what your organization is about, and where you want to end up as an organization. The mission, how you're going to go about doing that. You want to have programs, establish programs. And as my cohort here, Ingrid, Professor Ingrid is going to tell you, things don't work without a program. You don't get funded, okay? Because people that fund, they fund a program. You need bylaws to govern, okay? Because a nonprofit doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the community. And if you think of some of the biggest organizations, you think about United Way, being around since 1888, I believe. Since the 1880s, right? You think the original founders, that priest and that teacher and those people that got together and got it started, you think they're still alive running it? They're long gone. So it belongs to the community. You people came on board and continued it. You need to have a budget. If you're gonna, probably the reason you think there's no money because you don't have a budget. Because when you have a budget, people say, wow, I love what you're doing. How can I help you? You gotta have a number. And then of course you want to create, and you want to have grant proposal, which is the very expertise of Professor Ingrid. So let's talk about incorporation. Let the world know you exist. If you don't establish formally your organization, it might sound great, you might have the greatest ideas, but the world does not know you exist. When they look you up, they can't find you anywhere. So typically what you want to do is you want to incorporate as my organization, Inc. Period. I do not recommend anything else. Do not incorporate it as an LLC because you will be denied as a nonprofit. No grant maker, no foundation is going to give you a penny as an LLC. Not calling yourself a nonprofit. Okay? Do not set up as a DBA because that's very hard to see. But the other part is the liability. Ends up being back to you. So you don't want to be a DBA, you don't want to be an LLC, you want to be my organization, Inc. Okay? So benefits of incorporation is it separates entity status. So therefore it separates from Dr. Ronald Setu to the Setu Foundation, Inc. So it becomes two distinct entities. As I mentioned before, the people that organize United Way are no longer there, but it's on everybody's lips. Most people know about United Way. By becoming an entity, you are able to apply for tax exempt status, which I mentioned to you earlier. There's roughly about 40 different types of status that you could go for based on what you're seeking to do, right? Access to grants, So if you need money, right? Did I say money? Yes. If you need money, yeah, you may want to look at grants. But I always tell people before you look at grants, there are so many other ways to get funded. But we'll talk about that in a little bit, right? But but you always want to have access to grants because they're beautiful. Because the money comes and you're like, boom, you go, right? Also, you incorporate because you want limited liability protection. In other words, you're not 100% exonerated and protected, but you are mostly protected by the activities that are deemed and considered the activities of the corporation versus the activities of Jacques Laurent. You know, now Jacques Laurent is a really bad guy, but the Jacques Laurent Foundation is awesome, right? So there's a separation between the two. Credibility, because now they could look you up. They have information that's separate from you and then all the people in there. So you may have some people that looked so good at the beginning and then you find, maybe not so good, but the organization continued to do its work. It sustained its credibility, and you could always weed out the bad apples, but you know, the organization is credible. Let's talk about board organization since we're talking about credibility, right? This is assembling your governing body. What does that mean? When you have a organization, you have a board, those are the people that are running the organization. They have different positions. The chair and vice chair, for example. You can have a president, you know, and there's different names that pop up, right? The chairman, the president, the CEO. It's all a bunch of, you know, musical chair. But at the end of the day, based on the way you're structured, based on your size, you might have all, or you just pick one and it works. Yes, go ahead.
Would it hurt you if you had your committee set up and they all had the same last name, family?
That's something to get into.
Okay.
It depends, but generally yes. Okay, if you set up a foundation that's family based, obviously that's in your vision and your mission. Then it's a way for the family to support each other. That could work. But and of course, when you first start to, the people that may be there to support you in the beginning might be family. But as you grow, if you want to get funding, then you run into that, right? Particularly if you have a private foundation. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Well, they're giving up their money, so the government can't tell them they can't run it together.
Right.
But when you're going after other people's money, OPM, yeah, it hurts.
Okay.
Because they want to see transparency. They want to see that it's not the inurement of a small group of people. But that's a great question.
Thank you.
Great question.
In some states, you cannot have family members on your board. So
Wow.
sometimes it's a legal regulation.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have the board, the general board, then you can have different committees like governance committee, finance committee, the executive committee, fundraising committee, marketing committee, and you could go on and on. I've seen organizations, they have 15, 20 committees. All depends on your need. You establish committees. So typically, if you have 5 programs, you want to at least have 5 committees for those programs. You definitely want a finance committee. You definitely want a fundraising committee. But it all depends on what you're trying to do and to what extent or level you're trying to do it, right? Vision.
Quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
When it comes to like finding board of directors, I know in Georgia it can't be your family. How would you go about finding someone who kind of has the same values as you?
Excellent question. Did we mention something about a vision and a mission? The role you have that person on the board fulfilling needs to match your vision and your mission.
What you may want to do when you first have an idea that you want to create a nonprofit is gather people around you who you want to share that with. And there's a concept that you can use called group. You create WOOP. You create a wish, because it's a wish that you have. And once you create that wish with people that are interested in what you're doing, write down, what do you think is the outcome of that wish? I want to see all children not be hungry. I want young African American men to learn a musical instrument because it is a path to success. Whatever the wish is, what is the outcome that you think you can do? What's the obstacle? And one of the biggest obstacles that nonprofits have is that they did not do their research and that area is saturated already. You always want to find out how many other people are doing this also. Then you come up with a plan. So I know anyone who's ever had a business class, you know about SMART. So SMART will come in then. Do the whoop. What's your wish? What's the outcome? What's the obstacle? And what's the plan? And then go on irs.gov, as long as it's in existence, it is today, and on irs.gov, download publication number 557. Publication number 557. So a great mistake people make is that they think, I'm a 501c3, so it's understood that I'm a charity. 501c3 classification, letter of determination, is only about the IRS. And the reason we have 501c3 classifications, I should say 501c classification, is, as Jacques mentioned, there's a lot of money in nonprofits, therefore there's fraud. And that's why we have the classifications. It works like scaffolding. It's, I have the 501c3, therefore I don't have to pay taxes. Therefore, I keep track of all the money I get. Therefore, I submit a 990 at the end of every year. Now, on the other side, since you don't have to pay taxes, and many organizations are going to be willing to give you money, they're going to be reporting to the IRS they gave
you money.
And it must always match up. So that's the IRS portion. Then, the other piece of it is what it was you wanted to do to begin with. What was your plan? And when we talk about vision, we do a whole training on board development. And you always want to remind yourself and your board, what is our mission? And to answer your question, only when you find people that are there for your mission should they be on your board. They should not be there because they're your friend and they want to help you. That's kind and it's wonderful. It is not going to help you to be successful. You want people on your board who are there for your mission. You do not want friends and comrades. You want constituents on your board. You want people who are there not for you. You want people who are there for the outcome. Big difference. Because if they're there for you and they fall out with you, they're gone. Now you have a missing person on your board. You need people there who are there for the mission. That's why they're there. So always make sure you have, once you go through all of the steps, you always create job descriptions for people on your board. It's a job. It's a job they're willing to do. And on that job description, you want it to be like any other job description. Duties, responsibilities. And that holds them accountable. The other thing a nice job description does to get the proper people is there's definitely requirements. So once you have that, you want your vice president, you want your person who does finance to know finance. It can't be the person, oh yeah, I like numbers. That doesn't work. It has to be somebody who knows how to run a spreadsheet, interpret it. And there are organizations, by the way, that are nonprofits who will give you those people if you don't have them in your community. Okay, it's a very, very nice organization to be with. So definitely always go back to the mission. Make sure that there are not a lot of organizations that are already doing what you're doing. It's just like your regular business, your regular for-profit. When you created your business plan, you had to state who were other people in your community doing the same thing. And if you have too many people wanting to feed the world, you're not going to get funded. And it's also always about how you're willing to do it. You're going to get funded, okay? So I hope that answers your question in terms of always have that right matchup. The best way to get the right matchup is to have a good board plan.
Motion detected at your front
And
door.
also your strategic plan, but that's a whole other conversation that we can have. All right. Any other questions?
Good answer.
Good info.
It was very detailed.
You mentioned the nonprofit that helps you find people to be on your board. Do you know the name of it?
I can, if you can send me an email and I'll send you their exact name. And actually,
Okay.
and on certain times of year, they actually offer a grant that you can win. You apply for it just like anyone else, and they will help you with funding to develop your board. So I will definitely send that to you.
Why you do that?
Okay. All right. That answer your question?
Great question.
Works for everything.
Might do it, but
Okay.
you gotta be specific.
So, excellent. So, let's talk about the vision.
All right.
The vision is what? It's the future that you see. So, a typical way of give me a second, having technical difficulties here. Excellent. Oh, yes. Okay. Disaster averted.
Okay.
So, the best way to describe a vision is simple. It's the future you intend to create. You see a problem, you see a need, and you fast forward 30 years from now, and you see that problem has been eliminated. That's where your vision starts. The idea is to work yourself out of a job. You should be looking at that your nonprofit should no longer exist. Okay? And that's the ultimate goal. So basically you're looking at how you're going to change the world. Okay? Essentially, your vision is the destination. So a good vision statement answers these questions. What is the big and audacious impact you want to make on the world? And always go big. Because if you go small or medium, guess what happens? It's not 30 years anymore, right? It's 5 years. It's 3 years. You know, maybe 6 or 10 if you're lucky. Because by that time, you know, whatever impact you wanted to have is over. And that's okay if that's all you want to do.
Right.
But if you want to have a sustainable organization, you want to go big and audacious.
See?
And the vision as well needs to answer this question. How will the world look once you're successful? Remember I was talking about looking at 30 years from now? This is what the world looks like. Okay? Mission statement. How you will build that future. So the vision talks about how the world looks down the road. Okay? So you're taking a trip. I want to go to Broadway. That's the vision, is to be at Broadway and see a play. What's the mission?
How you gonna get there?
You know, get a map, get in the car, get on the highway, and end up in Manhattan. Those are the mission, right? So when you talk about the vision, it's the journey towards your vision. It's your core work. A good mission statement answers these questions, right? What will you do to make your vision a reality? Are you gonna just lay in bed and dream about it? It's not a vision anymore. It's a dream. A vision has action behind it. A dream, you don't have to do nothing, right? So what will you do to make that vision a reality? And how are you going to do it? In other words, your mission is a short, direct, and compelling way to state your theory of change for your organization. It's the link between your everyday activities and your long-term goals. So, the mission statement should be more tangible, more practical than a vision statement. A mission statement tends to have a shorter lifespan and it evolves more frequently. Okay? So you might change your mission from time to time. Oh man, just found out there was a big blockade in 75. Remember when the highway just went down? If your plan was to go up 85 through the city, now you have to change to go on to 85 instead, right? So your mission might change a little more often than your vision, but the ultimate goal is to get where? Broadway. Okay? So once you've established your vision, your destination, and you've established your mission, which is the way you get there, organizational programs. That's a collection of resources that's geared towards accomplishing the set goals, right? So you go into New York, if you're taking a car, make sure, you got a good functioning car, make sure you got gas, make sure you got food, or you got money to get food on the way, make sure you got a place to stay or money there for a place to stay. So those are the foundations to get you there. Without these pieces, you can't get there.
Right.
So you think of the program that way, the hotels, the car, all these things that get you there, the vehicles that build you. You think of the military, right? They have the Army, the Navy, and so forth. Those are programs that build young men and young women to go out and fight. So now they're ready to go fight. When there's an issue, they go on a mission. Okay? So think of it that way. So your organizational programs have to be in place. And so some of the key things you need to know about a program is a system with input, processes, outputs, things that are tangible, and outcomes. Impacts on clients, impacts on stakeholders, with ongoing feedback among the parts. Right? So you drive the car to the highway takes you to the gas station, the gas takes you to the hotel, and so forth and so on. So all these things are different parts that connect to get you there to your destination. Programs should tie to the organization's mission. Okay, if you find yourself on Highway 20 or Highway 10, or Highway 5 somewhere in California, you probably are not going to be going to New York, right? Program planning should tie in with strategic planning. You can't have a strategic plan for the whole organization and then you have different programs here doing different things. If you're taking the whole family, then somebody says, we're going to get a sports car, that'll get us faster. It has to tie in. If it's the family, you need a vehicle that can take the members of the family to go there. It needs to be an SUV or a van, something that has the capacity to get you there. Always involve the board. At the end of the day, the board is the one that has the fiduciary responsibility, meaning they're on the hook. When the IRS says, how come you guys are doing this thing that is not even part of what you're supposed to do? And what did you guys with the money? The board is answered that. The president, secretary, treasurer, and the other people that are on the board. So if you're doing stuff without the board knowing, or you think you got a greater idea than what the board has and the vision and mission, it might be time for you to start your own organization. But you need to have alignment, on the work. Conduct as a team. If you want to go solo, you don't need an organization. And one of my favorite lines is, Shaq was talking to Kobe and said to Kobe, There's no I in team. And Kobe said, yeah, but there's a me in there somewhere. So there's a you in there somewhere. You know, but the you is not the I. The me is not the I. You know, you bring yourself into it, but it's not about you. You know, you come to fulfill the mission. It should involve potential service recipients as much as possible. So if you're saying you're going to help the kids need to be involved. They need to be giving you ideas. They need to be engaged, you know, in conversations, you know. You can't be, well, I'm going to do it for the kids. We're going to do all this and that, and then when you show up, the kids are like, what, huh? What are you doing? I don't know. You know, the kids walk away. But if they're involved, you're asking them because they're the recipients, then they're going to be engaged and they're going to participate and feel fulfilled. Avoid trying to build a perfect program plan. Okay? We often tend to do that. We're trying to build a perfect whatever. And how does the saying go? You know, we should try not to make the perfect the enemy of the good. Now, if you get it to be perfect, that's great. You know, but you always want to have excellence, the very best possible. But perfect, I think Jesus probably said it best. You know, if you want to be perfect, you talk to Jesus, right? But perfection is not among us, but we can bring excellence to the table. So avoid trying to build a perfect program. Always build a program that you vetted and took the time to work well. But at some point, you need to go. Make it happen. You may start, okay, it's doing 50% of what I'm doing, 30% what I want to see get done. Maybe doing 50%, but you get started and you build and you build and you build. You know. But if you wait until everything is built and perfect before you do anything, you might find out what you actually intended to build does not fit the people that you're trying to serve. It may not be what happens, but you're learning as you go along. Bylaws. Go ahead, sure.
So, let's say if, as a startup nonprofit, if I have multiple, let's say, programs, is it best to try to operate? Is it best to build one at a time, or try to do multiple things at one time?
Ding, 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 ding. Great question. So, did you bring the $1,000 back?
I did.
You did? Okay, give the $1,000 back.
Wait, I got a question.
So, the question is, if you have multiple programs in your organization, you have 3 programs, is it best to build one at a time or build all 3? I'm going to ask somebody in the room or on the Zoom to answer that. Anybody want to take a strike? Which one?
I think you just need to go ahead.
No, I would say one at a time.
Yeah.
One at a time? What do you say?
It depends.
Okay.
Because sometimes it might be best to do each different program, but then it could be other times you could just focus in and maybe you could tie them all into one.
So you're just starting out now. He said if you're just starting out, right?
Just starting out?
Yeah.
Just one, I would think.
Okay. Anybody on the Zoom want to say something?
Yeah, I think one too.
No? The answer.
I would probably start
If you just
the
do it now.
basic part of all 3 of them, and then gradually work to adding on more parts of the programs, because then you can, because each program will have a different, mission itself, and so you can still hit certain goals within those 3 programs as you grow and develop them, and you can learn from one program, see what worked and didn't work, and kind of like apply that. Okay. So the answer is one at a time, right?
No.
No? Okay. Let's turn it to Professor Ingram. Let me hush up, be quiet. Go ahead.
The answer is the reason why you sat down with your board and you created a strategic plan. In that strategic plan, you indicated what you wanted to do. And what you want to do may be done in one program, but it may not. If you want to ensure young entrepreneurs have the skills that they need to be successful, one program would be creating an environment where young entrepreneurs could meet with seasoned entrepreneurs. That's a program. The other program would be the identification and recruitment of the youth. That's a second program. You definitely go back to your strategic plan and decide, what is it I want? Now, let me take that back a second. If you don't do it strategically, you dilute your efforts, and yes, one program is better because at least you put all of your energy into it and it's doing well. But if you do it strategically and properly, you should have more than one program. And as a grant writer, you get more money. Because if you apply for a grant for the entrepreneurs, that comes from the people who want to fund entrepreneurs. If you apply for the grant for the students, that comes from the people who want to fund entrepreneurs, who want to help people, who want to do education. Many different pots. But again, I want to reiterate, which is what Jacques is saying, and what you're saying. You have to have it planned out. It cannot be willy-nilly. No! we want to go to Texas and do this. Okay, create a program. Okay, and I want to have more people ages 10 to 15. Program. No. It has to come back to, what did we say in our strategic plan when I sat with the people who are professionals in the area I want to work? What did they suggest? And then you go to your program. Programs are what fund your organization. Just like Jacques said before, Harvard is a 501c3. Now, if they, think about that, if they were just running one class, it wouldn't work. So it depends on what it is you want to do, really. And most of the time, what you want to do has many different arms. Your program, just like your vision statement, now this is going to sound confusing, but you have to do it. Every program should have its own vision statement. And that vision statement is a sentence that goes as your elevator pitch. So you're on the elevator, you meet somebody, you, hey, oh, Jack, yeah, he owns this thing that does blah, da, 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 da. You have your one sentence ready. Hi, I do, with, and here's where I want to be. Here's my card. Can you get in contact with me? Just like that. That's how it works. Your program also, I know I'm jumping ahead for a second, every program has its own budget. And that's how it's going to get funded, yeah. So the answer is, one, if your mission statement can be fulfilled with one.
So, Professor Ingrid, I was right, but I get 100%.
Every now and then.
So, the answer is it depends, okay? So, when you're starting out, you have your programs, you flesh them out, you put it on paper. And I know that sounds tedious, you know, because a lot of times we want to go take action, and that's great and wonderful. But when you don't have it organized, then people look at you like you're crazy. And especially, correct me if I'm wrong, funders and grant makers and donors, right?
That's right.
Because they're like, what am I funding? Am I funding the stuff to Texas, or am I funding the stuff for 15 to 30 or whatever,
That's
right?
That's right.
Because they don't know what they're putting their money into. So you want it, like she said, well outlined and go forward. So you may implement one, then a second, then a third, based on the opportunities, you know, to make it happen. But your plan needs to be there, well outlined, and ready to go.
And always kiss it. The military people know what kiss means.
Right?
Keep it simple, soldier.
Yes.
And for for 501c3s, for nonprofits, we could just say, keep it simple, servant.
There you go. Excellent.
Okay.
Now I've heard another version of it, but we'll leave that. There's way too many people smart in here. Bylaws. And I hope we answered your question. So create the bylaws. Bylaws is the legally binding rule that outlines how the board will operate. Okay? Basically, how elections will be held, what offices are there, who will do what, and the different standing committees, conflicts of interest. So those are what defines. It's like the Constitution of the United States. You know what's legal, what's not. We all know that we have freedom of speech, right?
Right. That's what I say.
And we have all these different rules and freedoms that we're afforded through the Constitution. So your bylaws is essentially your Constitution for your organization. So what are some of the things that you want to have in your bylaws? The name and purpose of the organization, your board structure, sizes and committees, etc. So you're gonna have is your maximum. What's your minimum board membership? Maximum board membership. What are some of the standing committees? You can always have additional committees, but some committees, might be required for what you do. Okay. Elections, the roles and the terms of the board members. Is it for 1 year, for 2 years? Typically you don't go beyond 2, 3, 4 years, but basically the board does not last forever, right? Even if the person gets reelected, but that person got reelected for another year or another 2 years or another 4 years. But typically, again, remember what I said at the beginning, the organization does not belong to you, it belongs to the community. So you engage the community to get involved. Role of executives and chairpersons. What is their roles? Meeting guidelines. How often do you meet? You meet once a month, once a quarter, once a year. What constitutes quorum, right? If you have 9 people on your board, how many people would make a decision legal and binding? How much time do you need to announce so the meeting is legit? Because I could call a meeting and say everybody would meet in 2 hours, but because I know somebody's not going to be there, I'm really kind of cutting that person out, right? But if I call the meeting 2 or 3 days in advance, the person had plenty of time to make themselves available. So therefore, I'm not, undermining that person. So we always want to make things fair. Compensation and indemnification of board. What are the rules on compensation? What are the rules for indemnification? What are they liable for? Conflict of interest policy, okay? And often I hear a lot of different what conflict of interest is, and often it's not what people say conflict of interest is or think it is, But conflict of interest is really in the process and in the act, not in the personality and individual. Okay, and if you have an organization that has membership, what are the categories, what are the responsibilities by the organization and by the members, towards each other. Amendment of bylaws. So when you first start out, you might have not had everything fleshed out. So you might have some amendments that come down the way. And what if, horrors of all horrors, the organization, no longer exists and you have to shut it down. What are the solution clauses? And there are laws and rules that govern that. So you need to make sure that the federal laws and the state laws govern some of this stuff that's in here. Okay? Any questions on the bylaws? Okay? Next. Did you say budget?
I did say budget.
That's one of my favorite things. Can we talk about budget? Let's talk about money. Money, 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 money.
Money.
So, how many of you want to know how to get to the money? Raise your hand.
I think we all do.
I don't see anybody raising their hands on the Zoom. Only one person on the Zoom. Everybody in here raise their hand. They want to know. They want to get some money. Okay, awesome. Because at the end of the day, everything works
with money.
Mm-hmm. You can have the greatest ideas, greatest mission, greatest vision, greatest plan. Without execution, it's not going anywhere, right? Amen. And to execute, a good part of it is going to require people, but a good part of it is going to need money. And so knowing how to get to the money is important. So the very first key aspect of getting money is what, Professor Ingrid?
Organized, precise collection of data. That's just the beginning.
You gotta have your data together and have a budget, okay? So what is a budget? A budget is very simple. It's a breakdown of expected annual revenue and expenses. We do that all day, all the time. But what I find is a lot of people, when you say the word budget, they question, oh, you might as well have said the boogeyman. But we all go through our revenue or income and expenses constantly, right? For you to come here, you're like, okay, I gotta get over here, I gotta have gas, so, you know, I need money to put gas in the car. You know, so you get the money to put gas in the car, and then you spend it at the gas station. That's a basic, simplified, oversimplified budget. Wouldn't you say? You got the revenue, you have to, you know, get your ATM card or go to the bank account and withdraw the money. You know, and then when you get there, you say, I want some gas, and they say, okay, fine, I'll get you gas. You know, how much you want? Well, X amount of gallons. Okay, that's going to cost you X amount of dollars. That's revenue, which is money from your ATM, and expense, which you spend at the gas station. That's about as simple. Did I oversimplify it? You know? See, that's why I like to work for Professor Ingrid. She will keep me in straight and narrow. But when you build a budget, you basically go and review what is it that you're gonna where the money's gonna come from, and then you start breaking it down, right? So model A, expected expenses first. You would calculate all expenses needed for your organization's activities, and then create a plan to fundraise enough income to cover all expenses. Okay? So you say, okay, I'm gonna look at how much I need to spend. Okay? I'm gonna hop in my car. I'm gonna go to Atlanta. That's about 50 miles away. Okay? And for that 15 miles, my car does 20 miles a gallon, so 20 times 15, whatever, right? That's how much I'm gonna need, right? Now, with that, that's about what? I don't know. You know, 15, 20 bucks. Check my pocket, I only got $3. I need 17 bucks. What do? Go to ATM, turn to mom and dad, cousin, uncle, whoever, you know, and I get $20 and I'm able to get here. But I had made my plan already to go to the city. Now I just got to figure out how I'm going to make that happen. So expenses first, then you fundraise the money to cover the expenses. Model B is expected income first. First, see how much income is expected, then plan activities based on how much the organization can spend. Okay? So typically, you run on both, right? Gotta eat. See, let's see how much money I got. Okay, I only got 10 bucks, so that's McDonald's money. I got 50 bucks, you know. Oh, that's gonna be, I don't know, Bahama Breeze money. Got a couple $100. Man, I am going to downtown and just spending, you know, and just spending in a restaurant on top of, what's the hotel? Westin Hotel, right? Sundial. I'm going to Sundial because I got $200 to spend. Right? So, based on what you have, you determine the impact you're going to make to your organization. Often you use both models. Typically it's a combination. Okay? But you generally want to sit and create your budget and look at the landscape and see what you need to do. But either way, you can't go wrong, right? But you just have to make sure that at the end of the day, you're not spending more than you're making. Because then the organization goes bankrupt.
Can I add something
Sure,
there?
sure.
Don't be cheap to yourself. Don't expect other people to be cheap. Do not live in a scarcity mentality, because then you will ask for money like that. You have to, first it goes all the way back to your mission and your passion. And that's why we said it's really not about you. It's about the community you want. when you sit down, you say, this is what we want to do, this is how much it's going to cost, and remember, build some advertising into your budget. If people don't know what you're doing, they're not going to fund it. Be positive about your organization. There's a big difference between, yeah, we're trying to field the kids. You think you could help us out? Versus, this year we're looking to raise $10,000 for the children, and this is what we're going to do with it. This is what we did last year. We have pictures. How much can I ask you for? That's a very different way. One way says to me, you believe in yourself enough that I want to help you out. The other way is like, wow, if you're scrunting, what am I going to do? Come on now, right? So it's all about that. You want to be real. That's why you're putting a budget. It can't be, oh, if this was me. It's not you. It's the community you want to serve. You want to develop a great budget. Okay, there's a great place online. It's free. It's called candid.org. 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 They have excellent free resources that can help you be a better fundraiser. CANDID.org. Back in the day, I'm old school, it used to be called the Foundation Center, but they connected everything, and now they're candid.org.
Awesome.
Don't forget marketing.
Yes.
Yep, people got to know about you. So, yes. So we're not operating in scarcity mentality. We're operating in what? In what? In
Prosperity.
Prosperity.
Knowing it.
Knowing it.
We're
you know?
balling.
Exactly.
Question.
Go ahead.
So, I'm just confirming that as a nonprofit, marketing and advertising is part of my budget.
Absolutely. And there's funding for it.
How are people going to know about what you're doing if you don't tell people?
Because I walk around and I say, hey.
That works.
And that's all marketing is. Okay, it's you're telling people this is what we're doing. We got a basketball league to keep the kids off the street. Okay, if the kids don't know about it, how they gonna show up?
Right. Yeah.
You know.
And if they don't know in a way that's attractive to them.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
right. So, for example, here's somebody sitting with a t-shirt that says HBCU educated, looking sharp, well put together.
I know.
If I walked up to her and said, what's that? And she says, oh, I went here and I'm educated, and she looks it, that makes a difference. She is a walking billboard. You have to be a walking billboard for your organization. Now, suppose she, had that shirt on looking like who did it and ran. You're like, oh, really? That helped you out, right?
You got different than Goodwill.
Yes.
You fronting.
And here's the thing about marketing, right? More than 30 years ago, because if you watch A Different World and stuff like that, you knew about Spelman and Morehouse and all this stuff, right?
Hillman.
Whatever. Hillman, but those schools. So I knew about those schools. Do you know that it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago I knew what HBCU was? I'd never heard of that before. Although I knew HBCU schools,
Yes.
I had no source. I'm like, what HBCU? So when you show up with a shirt that says HBCU educated, when I found out what HBCU was, I'm like, oh man, I feel so bad. I wish I was HBCU. So me and my silly Kennesaw and UC Santa Cruz, I wanted an HBCU. Why didn't I get HBCU? Mom and Dad, oh man, I got PTSD. I got trauma, But she's advertising. Because if I didn't know, I would walk up to her and say, hey, what's an HBCU? Because I see the word educated. I'm like, okay, educated, that means it's teaching us something. Maybe I want to learn it too. Piques the interest. So all of that is important in organizing your organization. So that needs to be in your budget. Because if you have the greatest plan and you have the money to do it and nobody knows about it, you're going to spend money on stuff that nobody's going to use.
Yes, so true. Yeah.
So that's an extremely important question. So, since we're talking about marketing, fundraising. there's different aspects of fundraising, so I'm going to break it down to the 4 basics. Okay, and Professor Ingrid, correct me well, I'm off, right?
Always.
Internal investment. And notice I use the word investment. I didn't use the word dues, I didn't use the word fees and so forth. Why? Because it tends to give the wrong connotation. Because as an organization, it's an investment. You're making an investment into the community. And if you think of it that way, people were treated that way. If you think of it as just give me the money, give me the fees, give me the dues, then people would think of it that way. Oh, they always ask me for money. But if you're saying you're making an investment into this community's future, people see it as, okay, let me help support this program. So language matters. So it's good to use the proper language. But internal investment, number one thing you got to do when you establish a nonprofit, you have to do some internal investment. And investment typically comes not just in dollars, but the 3 T's. Time, talent, and treasure. So yes, you're going to need some money because the incorporated costs $100 in Georgia. And to keep it in effect, for the state of Georgia, you got to pay $30 every year. Okay, to the state. Okay, so that's a minimum investment. Then we're talking about marketing, right? You need a website. Okay, you have all these other things that you got to do, right? So that's the minimum investment to start. So as the board, where's that money going to come from? If it's just your ideas, people haven't heard about it. And then in the first few years, you may just have to be the one funding it and pushing it just to get the attention, to market it, you may have to operate on a shoestring budget. But then that internal investment now allows other people to see what you're doing. And as they see what you're doing now, you pique their interest, and as you pique their interest, then there's an opportunity for them to participate. That's where you go to an external investment, donations, fundraising. You could have, a talent show, okay? You could have a banquet. You could have, those little pop.
Fish fry.
Huh?
Fish fry.
Fish fry. There you go. But even a lemonade stand. This is some good lemonade here. Even but now people are donating. To the organization, or you do a fee-based service that provides money. I remember my organization. We were rebuilding, and we started with plain and simple. We didn't have any money, so our biggest fundraiser was we made some T-shirts for $8, and we charged it $20. We got sold out, did another batch. Got sold out again, did another batch. But that was the basis. Now our budget is in 7 figures. But we started out.
7 figures.
6 figures, I'm sorry.
Okay,
not
I'm like,
7 yet. We're working our way up. 6 figures. But yeah, I'm glad I spoke, right? That's a good dream. But we have the community supporting us. We have grants, we have different funding coming, so that allows us to go forward. So external investments. Somebody had a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is okay to add my salary to my budget, correct?
What do you mean add your salary to your budget? For yourself, to
For
pay
myself,
yourself?
yeah.
That's a different conversation.
Okay. I kind of
Okay.
thought so.
Because there are some illegalities and some things some hurdles you have to overcome.
Okay.
Because first of all, particularly if you're in starting phase, there's no money to have a salary with, right? So you got to build that. You got to build that capacity, and it has to be sustainable, because you get a salary one year, next year you got no salary. So all that capacity building and sustainability have to come in play, and then at that point, now there's some legalities, and I'll let Professor Ingrid talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
But you wanna before you look at that, that comes down the road if and when that happens.
Gotcha.
Is that correct about that?
That's correct.
Okay.
From a perspective of investment, what would be their dividend?
The impact of the community. Okay. If the investment is to see the homeless off the streets, because every time you have to walk through dirt and mess and all this other stuff, and you're afraid for your life, you can't dress a certain way, you can't walk in certain neighborhoods. Now suddenly there's nobody on the streets to make you feel uncomfortable. Would you say that's a worthy investment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's all about that's so. As I said earlier, for-profits are measured in profit, but non-profits are measured in impact. So if the impact is you have a clean street and you have it's not encumbered and littered with people and tents and stuff like that, that's a worthy investment, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, so investment, corporate and government sponsors. So to your point, government would love to not have to send police all the time to deal with the homeless. So they might want to fund your homeless initiative. Okay, corporations may not want to see that because they have a big building there. They have to sell it and move somewhere else, right? So rather than do that, they'll invest a little bit to help you with your initiative because it behooves them, because now they could bring big clientele instead of just tell them, let's go down the street. Let's go to the hotel down the street, which is another investment, but not with the real return they want, right? So that's when, the impact you're having, you've done it internally through your board and the people in the organization. If you have members, through the members, the external investment comes with donations and fundraising, and then you have the corporate investment, and then lastly now you start to get to the grants advocacy investment, right? And you want to talk about that type of investment? Go right ahead.
So grants are usually your last place, not resort, but your last place, because like donations, they're now for now. Grants, you apply for it in January, you will find out in March if you're eligible, you'll get the money in December. So grants are not really something to depend on for now. But if you have yourself organized and you write your grants properly, create a good narrative, have everything you need, the matchup, the grant writing process, it can be very lucrative. And grants are like, I don't know, like water. Like water calls water. If you get one, they're going to follow. I don't know why, I don't know the reason or rationale, but they follow each other. So that's always a great thing. Grant funding, it's good funding, it's great when you get it, and sometimes they're multi-year, but it's not the kind of funding when you're now starting out, you want to say, okay, I'm going to be all grant funded. You'll be very disappointed because they take a long time. Okay, I want to mention something also about your budgeting. Your board should be the first investor. Your board should be giving you at least $100 a person a year. You can go up from there. And that's great because they're investing in your organization that they said that they were okay with, and you can put that in your budget and it's legal. Double check all of the corporations that are where you are located. I don't know what it is now because there's so many new tax rules, but normally corporations can give away 2% of their earnings to organizations that they want to. You want to make yourself one of those organizations, and I just want to underscore that. I don't know what it is now. Do you, John?
No.
Okay, because the IRS laws are changing.
Everything is in flux right now.
So normally it's a percentage, which is great. And again, it goes back to the scaffolding that I mentioned. They'll say they gave it to you. You're going to send in your 990 and show that you got it. Definitely do that. Look online for every actor, actress that you know. Go on their website, look at it, and they will have a foundation attached because they know they can do it. What you're going to have to do, though, is figure out, does their foundation match with what you're doing? Carlos Santana had Milagro Foundation because he remembered one day he was sexually abused. Okay, so he only gives to sexual abuse. Celine Dion, this one. They all have it because their accountant, if they're worth their salt, said to them, you need to give some of this money away, and here's how you can do it. So there's that too. So you definitely, you definitely want to get in contact with a grant maker. That same website I mentioned, candid.org. When you go on it, there's a whole section on it called grant making, and you can actually, again, have free resources how to do it. If you have a nonprofit, you definitely want to go on and create a profile through a company called GuideStar. It's all free, and it's there. So people who are looking to give money, they will find you, and they'll send it to you. So there's all different ways. Definitely grant funding is excellent, but in the beginning, you really depend more on fundraising while you're waiting for the grant funding to come in. Start with your board. You know the socioeconomic of the people who are on your board. That doesn't matter to you. What you know is they said they are with you, they're committed to the cause, they know you're not going to be spending it, they're putting it in. Ask for at least $100 a year commitment, and they can pay it in installments. But in your budget, you can show that. When you're developing your budget too, definitely keep in mind in-kind dollars, people who are going to be giving their time to you. If you had to pay them, how much would it be? It makes your budget a little stronger.
Please repeat that.
In-kind dollars. So, like I'm here today. I'm not getting paid. Normally I get paid $150 an hour for what I do. So when Ron is putting together his budget, he can put, okay, we had a presentation, we had 2 presenters. Jacques obviously makes like $1 million an hour. I don't know. I just can speak for myself. He can put, you know, so-and-so was here for 3 hours, and if we, and he doesn't say this, but he has it in the in-kind column, if we had to pay her, it would have been this. A funder looking to fund you like to see that, because it means someone is committed to your cause.
And does that work both ways? Like, let's say, okay, I'm a trumpet player and I volunteer my effort to play at another function.
Yes.
Okay.
But why would you want to, where do you want that to work for you?
Okay, good question.
I mean, do you have the Julian Trumpet LLC or something like that?
Well, through my foundation.
Go through your foundation.
So let's say there's maybe a fundraiser and I volunteer to perform at this an event.
Right.
And I'm saying maybe, so this sounds like it might be just marketing, but I'm just
ding, 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 ding. Yes, marketing. So it works different ways. So in your case, it would be more marketing.
okay.
Because what happens is companies like Home Depot, Coca-Cola, these corporations, it's marketing for them, but it's also